Thanks. Thanks for joining today. My name's Mo Carland. I am with Maine Healthcare Association, and today we are kicking off the Maine Dementia Care Partnership. This is actually a reemergence of a group that started many years ago. Now it is really under the part of the Quest initiative, and we're going to be reawakening this group and finding better ways to serve our residents when it comes to people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and other types of dementia, and the use of medications. So many of you are probably familiar with the Quest initiative. It is the name of the value-based purchasing program laid out by the state. And in a minute, Amanda will be dropping some links to the program into the chat box. So if you have questions, you can look at that. And if need be, we can set up some more meetings to talk about Quest, some office hours. I know Amanda is more than willing to do to talk more about them. So a few housekeeping items, if I could. First of all, if everyone could put your name, your role, and the name of your centers into the chat box. I would ask that you please put your device on mute if you're not speaking. We really would like to ask everyone to keep their cameras on. It just really helps us to be able to see each other and engage with each other. If you have any questions, feel free to use the virtual hand raising. If you don't know how to do that, you go to the React little icon, and then you can hit raise your hand. If you're joining via phone, you want to press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute or unmute your line. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat box. As Amanda said, this program is being recorded, and there'll be a posting of it on the DHHS rate reform website, and a link, as I said, to more information in there. So let's jump right into things. I want to start by introducing Dr. Susan Weary. Probably most of you know Dr. Weary. She's a nationally recognized keynote speaker. She facilitates many workshops on dementia, depression, healthy aging. Her experience is over 30 years of great experience, great wisdom. She's a physician. She is associated with UNE, and she brings a passion as well as a lot of common sense. So we're really thrilled and happy to have her as a resident of the great state of Maine. So Dr. Weary, I'm going to hand this off to you now.
Thank you very, very much. And I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here. As Mo just said, I've been at this a while, but Mo, you didn't credit me for 10 years. I've been at this for 40, not 30 years. You guys can do the math as you wish, but I could not be happier or prouder to be reassociated with the Maine Partnership to Improve Dementia Care in nursing homes. So let's just jump right in. I want to thank you all for being here. More importantly, I want to thank you for all that you do to care for the very people who have been at the center of my life's work, really for 40 years. So I am, as you heard, I'm a physician, I'm a geriatric psychiatrist. I've always had a foot in long-term care, even when I've done other clinical work or education work or whatever it is, always a foot in long-term care. And you care for the people that mean a lot to me. So thank you for all you do, for being here. And let me also thank you in advance for what I hope will be your active participation. Now, part of that active participation is that I'm not the only expert in the room. I am, as I said, contributing 40 years of experience to our endeavor, but there are a lot of people on this call, there are over 100 of you. And right now, what I'd like you to do in the chat is to put in your number of how long you've been at this. And I want to show you the number of years of collective experience that we bring to our new effort or our renewed effort to improve dementia care. So I'm going to ask for some help from the other folks on this team, Amanda and Mo, to head right over there to the chat room and help me start counting. Because what you are about to see, if we were in a room together, we'd run around the room and we'd do this together. 23 years, 32 years, 24 years, 5 years. See, I love this because somebody with a 5-year perspective brings fresh, new eyes, new energy. And those of us, like somebody who just sped by there, like me, has 41 years. Actually, you have one more year than me, doing this work, bring a different kind of perspective. And look at that. We have thousands and well, maybe not thousands and thousands, but at least 1,000 collective years of experience. And that is what we're going to rely on for this endeavor. So if you haven't put yours in yet, please keep it up, keep them counting, because later, when I do have my calculator at hand, I'm going to go in that chat box and see exactly not just how many people have been here, but what we bring to this experience. Now, in preparation for today, I was taking my own little trip down memory lane, and you're going to get a little history from Brenda Gallant and from Margie McLaughlin a little bit later. I'm not going to steal their thunder, but I'm going to give you my personal experience of this. I've been at this, and this being wanting to improve quality of care, quality of life for people living in nursing homes, as I said, for a good part of my career. I'm old enough to remember posies. Those of you who are in here, who have your 30, 40 years of experience like me, remember posies. Somebody with 5 years experience might be saying to themselves, what's a posy? So I'll ask the rest of you to please put in the chat box what a posy is and whether you remember them. I remember very well over 1984 when there was a huge campaign launched to bring culture change to nursing homes. And one of those was called Breaking the Bonds. We were untying people from their jerry chairs. We were untying people from radiators. We were lowering bed rails. And now I hear some people want to raise them again. We were alarming every device in sight because we thought, well, that's how we'll keep people safe. They're not going to let us use posies. We're going to alarm everything. And now we're getting rid of alarms. Most of them are gone too. We no longer alarm every bed and chair and device around. We've been at this a while, right? And we've seen various cycles. When we get smarter, we do things differently, we do them better. And I've been with it since we've been breaking the bonds. And I'm very, very pleased to be back here with you today. One of the things that I found on my trip down memory lane was a keynote that I gave to help celebrate something called Celebrating Excellence that Maine Healthcare Association sponsored in 2018. And I found this old slide, so I thought I would just pop it up there as evidence of some of the great work that, in fact, has already been done. So we're good at this. We know what to do, and we know how to do it. And we're here today because we've always been doing our best with what we know. But as Maya Angelou said, doing the best with what we know is good enough. But when we know better, we
Do
want
better.
to do better. And that's the spirit in which this quest is being undertaken. It's the spirit in which we undertake our conversation today. So, a little more on the why we do this. I think we do this because we are all committed to quality care. You wouldn't be here today, you wouldn't be in this business if you didn't care about your residents, about families, about your staff. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care about supporting one another. We're on a quest. For me, I have to say, as I have moved through this in my own personal path, it has become for me a real social justice issue, as well as all of the other issues like these, quality of care, that it's always been. The other reason we're here today is because we are, in fact, getting smarter. We understand dementia better. We know more about brain behavior relationships. We know more about the fact that behavior is communication, that it's not all about symptoms. It's not all about the so-called BPSD. Associated behaviors tell us something about the environment, about what's going on for the person, what's going on for everybody living in our communities. And because we know better, we want to do better. I can't believe how different the world of dementia education, dementia training has been. Again, over my career. At the start of my career, I was told by my attendings, my mentors, not to waste my time, that dementia was a dead end, that there was no value in doing it as a geriatric psychiatrist in pursuing a specialty in dementia because there was nothing we could do. We have come so far since then. So we have newer models of understanding dementia. We have newer models and new goals of dementia care. Because I've seen this wonderful shift from just a focus on the cure, we didn't have one, so we didn't know what to do, to moving through quality of care to a real focus on quality of life. We've all moved together in culture change through that institution-directed model of community living to person-directed models of community living. And we know now that for people living in long-term care, the quality of their life is what matters most to them. And what matters most to them is what ought to matter most to us. And so the Alzheimer's Association has their version of this, habilitation. I've had my version with Oasis. TIPA has her version with positive approach to care. But at the end of the day, the why of our wanting to improve again is that we have more models, more tools at our disposal. So we want to use them, right? And then finally, the other reason is that antipsychotic use has crept back up. And we want to get back to appropriate use of antipsychotic. Actually, we want to get back to appropriate use of all medication. The other way to unpack this why is to remind us that antipsychotic medications are simply not safe. They're not safe to use, and they're absolutely not safe to use in the long term. Are there some situations where short-term benefit um, may outweigh the risks? Maybe, but long-term use, there is not a scenario where a off-label use of a drug has the benefit outweighing the risk. So we know this, you know these facts. We know that antipsychotics in the setting of people with dementia increases their risk of death, of stroke, of hospitalization, of falls and fractures and pneumonia, of akathisia, which has to be one of the worst adverse drug reactions from antipsychotics, which is, as you'll recall, that motor restlessness that results in the person's absolute inability to sit still. Patients have described it to me as like having their motor on high rev and unable to kick it off. It's awful. And we know since 2005, that's 20 years, the FDA has been warning us about this. Okay, so they're unsafe. There is, frankly, also no good rationale for using antipsychotics other than their sedating effects. There is no such thing still, despite what the pharmaceutical company keeps promoting. There really is not an anti-agitation, anti-aggression medication for use in the long term with people with dementia. They don't work very well. But from my perspective, one of the biggest problems of reaching for the antipsychotic is that it forecloses our learning what the person is trying to communicate. So when we reach for the medicine and we just want the behavior to stop, we don't know what the person's been trying to tell us. And finally, these drugs are really unpleasant. The side effects from antipsychotic medications are really significant. And from the recipient, from the person who's taking them, the sedation, the stiffness, the disturbance in their gait, making them at higher risk of falls, the dehydration, the tremors, and frankly, the accelerated cognitive decline result in their detachment, result in more difficulty with engagement. And so there isn't an ability or an interest in being able to participate in many of the very active programs that many of you put on. And I think part of it is because we don't always appreciate the drug burden that so many people living in long-term care experience, not just from antipsychotics, but from a whole host of drugs that make you feel just a little groggy, maybe just a little nauseous, maybe just a lot constipated, maybe just a little constipated. And that whole 13 pills 13 pills a session just make you not feel very good. So we don't want to add anything that is absolutely not necessary. So bottom line here, folks, antipsychotics make people feel lousy. They kill some people and they don't work very well. So what are we doing? Why do we keep using them? I'd like to know what you think about that. Please put in the chat why you think we still use drugs that have all of these problems. Specifically, why do we use antipsychotics? There's not a right or wrong here. I really want you to reflect. Well, gee, I know this. I know everything Dr. Weary just said. And yet in my facility, our rates are pretty high because we need them. Or our rates are pretty high because the doctors prescribe them. Or our rates are pretty high because we don't this or that. Or I disagree with Dr. Weary. I think they do work. I think people do need them. So pop it in there and I'll take a quick read here. Yeah, it's convenience. I agree, Jessica. A lot of times, as I'm not sure, Pooler, what your first name is, sorry. Um, but sometimes it's because somebody else has prescribed it and we don't want to stop it. And I have seen some pretty, oh, horrific's a little strong of a word, perhaps, but I've seen some pretty unfortunate situations where there was a reluctance to deprescribe what some other prescriber had put on. And then like a lot of other reasons. Yes, I would agree, Miss or Mr. Lane. We do see decreased hallucinations with antipsychotic meds. The question is, are they necessary? Is the hallucination a bother? I mean, quite frankly, we have this discussion in psychiatry for people with schizophrenia as well. Does the hallucination bother the person? Are the antipsychotics helping with the hallucination? And is it worth the burden? So what else do we have here? Some other reasons that we do it. A lack of education. I think that's true, Amanda. I think it's easier to medicate than to do a deep dive. And I don't think that that's because people don't care or don't want to take the time, but literally doing a deep dive, and I'm glad to hear that word, um, is what it does take and what we need to learn how to do in a more efficient but equally effective way so that we don't resist that deep dive. These are really wonderful, wonderful understandings or insights that you already have into why we persist in doing something for people that has some harm valence as well, right? I think, frankly, at the end of the day, we do it because we don't like to see people suffer. We don't like to suffer. We don't like other residents to suffer. We don't like the person with dementia to suffer. And I think that for the most part, the convenience, if you will, the path of least resistance is not just because, we want people to be quiet, but we want people to stop making us feel uncomfortable with our own limited ability, perhaps, to truly be helpful. So I think that that's an acknowledgement, a validation that you should all give of yourselves, as well as all these other reasons. It's never just one, but I think that it's hard working in long-term care to have family and other residents saying, can't you make them stop? Or you want to see the person stop, or you simply don't know what else to do because of a lack of education. Whoops. Hear that? That tells me I have 5 minutes to wrap up my part of this program. And I'm right on schedule, Mo. You'll be happy to know. I think also that we have certain beliefs and we make certain assumptions about antipsychotics and other psychotropic medications. And whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, that just shows where that picture came from. Now I don't know if I know how to go back. Let me try to escape this one. See if I can put my glasses on here. Stop this, go back here. Let me stop sharing for a moment and go back to this. And I was doing so well to stay on time. There we go. Okay, So we do, as I said, want to reduce suffering. We make certain beliefs, we make certain assumptions. And here are some of them. I think we captured all these in the chat already. But let me tell you how I sum this up. I think one of the biases that we have is that for some people, they still think about dementia predominantly as a disease. And so behaviors are symptoms, and symptoms need to be treated. And in our culture, when we think about treatment, we think about drugs. This is the biggest problem I find in talking to my physician colleagues and nurse practitioner colleagues, is that that framework that they use cognitively for behavior, the BPSDs, the biological, psychological symptoms of dementia, it is a symptom disease lens. But we know that dementia is also has some things in common with disability. It's not just a disease. And we know that when it comes to behaviors, that it has nothing to do with the dementia, except insofar as the person can't tell us in words what they need. And so they tell us in their behaviors. So behaviors really are communication, um, and it's just too simple-minded a framework to say it's all BPSD. But that is a framework that has taken hold. And when you have that framework, if it's a symptom, why not treat it with a drug? So we have this cultural bias. That's one. We also think that they work. And sometimes maybe they work, but in my experience, we often give drugs a lot of credit for working, reducing the suffering, when in fact, it was a change in the environment. It was a kind word from a CNA. It was a family member coming in. And so we sometimes give drugs credit that they don't deserve. And then finally, we don't ever want to risk stopping something that somebody else started because we don't have enough practice in that. And I think that we can get much, much better at that. But I am so convinced that we've got this. I know that we will emerge from this with a higher quality of care, a higher quality of life for people living with dementia, and quite frankly, higher quality jobs. And I hope to be part of you on this quest journey. I thank you again, quite sincerely, for all that you do. And I thank you for being here today. And I thank you for your very active participation. Mo, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Wary. Thank you very much. Just to let everyone know, we will have some time for questions, discussions, all of that in just a little bit. But I'd like to introduce a couple of other people who are going to talk a little bit with us today. And both of these ladies were instrumental in the original version of the Dementia Care Partnership. First off, I'd like to introduce Brenda Gallant. Most of you probably know Brenda. She is the main long-term care ombudsman, and she has held this role for many years. I'm not even going to try to assign a number of years there. And those of us who know her know how absolutely passionate she is about caring for the residents in all of Maine long-term care centers and programs. Also today is Margie McLaughlin, who is a founding member, again, of this original partnership. And she's a quality improvement specialist with the QIO Health Centric Advisors. So I'm going to let Brenda take over, and I'm going to share my screen with their slides.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. And it's so nice to see so many of you here. So just a quick history of the Maine Dementia Partnership. In 2012, the Ombudsman Program worked with the Maine Healthcare Association, the Culture Change Coalition, and the Quality Improvement Organization to establish the Maine Partnership to improve dementia care in nursing homes. And this group was really so effective over the years. And this was really, it was established in response to the CMS initiative to reduce the use of antipsychotics, first by 15%, then 30%. In terms of goals, and Maine exceeded both these goals. I think we got to 38.3% in terms of the reduction, which was huge. We were leaders in the state. Every time the data came out from CMS, we would look at the data. We were so excited to be leaders throughout, and I know we can do that again. The coalition was very active. We had a kickoff conference. Dr. Wary participated in that. We had much participation. We developed a consumer fact sheet to let family members know about the dangers of antipsychotic use. We had an annual workshop every year where we would bring providers together and we would establish goals for the year. We developed a toolkit, which I know is available right now on the Maine Healthcare Association website. You'll be hearing more about that. And that was developed with the QIO and partnership members. And it really includes strategies for reduction of antipsychotics, and you can pick the strategies that would work best for you. We did a mentoring program, so facilities that had very good success could share with those that were struggling with reductions. And we also did a music and memory project in 40 nursing homes. That was amazing. We had very good results. We did a survey before and after. And we also did training with direct care staff throughout the state, which was really well received. And also, I know that Dr. Wary also did a training on behaviorist communication. So I'd just like to say, I know we can do this again. This was really all with the work of providers who were amazing when they were given the support. And I know we can do this again. And I'm so glad that we're back together to do this work all over again.
Thank you, Brenda. Margie.
Hi, everybody. So good to see all my familiar faces and so many lovely folks on the call today. Maureen, if you don't mind advancing the slide. Thank you, Brenda, too, for the little background, because it kind of gives you a sense of all of the great collaboration that went on in order to create the Dementia Care Change Package. The Dementia Care Change Package has 8 simple steps. And I think most importantly, it begins with a certain commitment. And the team together decided that the first page of the toolkit would actually be to ask people to sign a letter of commitment that they were willing to move forward and to create the best possible dementia care that was possible for our residents all across Maine. Next slide, you'll see how we developed the toolkit. And you can see here the actual 8 steps that you would take. The first one, first line of defense. Second is creating a therapeutic environment so that the environment itself speaks to and addresses some of the expressions and behavioral issues that are happening within your organization, and try to mitigate that through your environment. A data-driven dashboard, making sure that we're keeping an eye on the data. Obvious and demonstrated competencies, meaning that staff would literally be locked and loaded to just be able to deliver the best possible dementia care. We thought carefully about hospital transitions, family education as a key part of that, the process for gradual dose reduction. You notice it's number 7, and that's because we hope that people would implement 1 through 6 before they started even thinking about a gradual dose reduction, because so many times we hear how people give it a try and then 3 weeks later it didn't work so well. But it was because they didn't have some of the other things in place to begin with. And then literally having conversations and physician medical director engagement. And so that was the 8th step. My role here today is just to tell you a little about that first line of defense. And the committee that we worked together with said, no sense in starting unless everybody's on the same page. And we recognize there's a place for antipsychotic drugs for some of our residents, but the most important thing was to think it through in terms of recognizing that as much as humanly possible, that we would put in place some of these strategies and interventions and get everybody singing from the same choir page. And that became a really key part of the story. That meant educating people, that meant talking with your physician, that meant working with families who kind of like, you know, wanted the bed rail and the antipsychotic drug. So a lot of times we had to really help people to kind of understand what the circumstances were. And so in the toolkit, it gives you really specific, how do you go about developing that first line of defense. And it gives you some really great ideas about working with staff and volunteers and basically training to, as Dr. Weary's opening act pretty much kind of said, not a great drug for elderly people for 100 reasons. And so helping people to understand that became a real key part of that. The other part is that this philosophy of care is identified in mission statements and policies so that it's all congruous all throughout your program. I'll just mention that some of the tools that go along with this are some education packets, things like All About Me, where we actually make a conscious effort to know key things about that resident, some personal directions that maybe the person has, some things about people's life story, all of those things, even fast facts. There's a document that you can give to families and you can teach right from that document. And though this is brief, I just wanted to say that first line of defense is number one for a reason. And it probably would take you probably a good 3 months to really infuse that into your culture. And so if the clock is ticking here on March 26, 2025, we would love for you to try to think through some of those actions and actually by the end of May or May 26th, maybe actually have some of that in place. So over to you, Mo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Margie. So what I want to do for a little bit here is be able to open up and talk about some of the questions. I think Dr. Weary has brought up a lot of things. Margie shared a lot of things. You know, a time for everyone just to kind of talk about their thoughts of, you know, where we're trying to go. And we'll talk about how do we now get this all going. Now, I know many of you probably may have been feeling that this was related to the Quest, the value-based purchasing program, kind of led you here. And I'm hoping that as we move forward, that it isn't just about that it's going to really be about making a difference. I think there's so many people who did such great work over the years in this program, in the Dementia Care Partnership. And we've been through so much in this field in the last 5 years through the pandemic. And I think a lot of it, I hear from so many people, we need to get back to some of the basics. So I'm going to just kind of open it up for some discussion. We've got, you know, a couple of experts here. And what do you have for questions or you want to talk about? Maybe especially with Dr. Weary here.
Jen, I think that I saw your box light up. This is going to be a little challenging. We're such a large group, but please be patient. And if no one does recognize that your hand is up, I've got 6 screens here, and
feel free to come off mute and ask your
just,
question.
yeah,
Sometimes it's easier, just pop off. So Peter put in the chat, I think the biggest challenge is going to be stable staffing, upper management, as well as floor staff. And so I'll speak to that just brief. Dr. Weir, are you on mute again?
I am. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that as part of the Quest initiative, the Quest program, there is another group that is going to be forming on the 30th of April, I believe, and that is the Culture Change Coalition. And again, you know these names, many of you who have been around for a while. We used to have a very active Culture Change Coalition in Maine. And again, bringing back things that we knew worked in the past, getting back to some of the basics.
Mo, can I jump in?
Please.
I want to go back to Peter's question. Some of the biggest challenges, my heart is with everybody. I know stable staffing is kind of a key. in my work at St. Elizabeth's Home, we created a dynamic setting for our folks who had Alzheimer's disease by creating an in-house daycare program. And what I mean by that is it didn't follow the traditional nursing home role. We used a space. We had fortunately a little parlor type of place down on the first floor. And we actually set up our program so that our folks could come down and be really engaged in very, very useful and appropriate activities that, like a daycare center, it ran for a good portion of the day. And the reason I'm telling you this is because by taking a big gang of folks off of the floors and creating a place where they could be actively engaged in meaningful things, took a lot of the pressure off of the nurses upstairs, and they were able to do nursing by license, being able to live up to the highest level of their nursing license, while the rec therapy department was very active in keeping people engaged in great activities. It's a solution that kind of levels the staffing issue. The only issue is transportation, getting people down to that setting. So it wasn't a day room either. It wasn't anything like that. It was set up
Actually,
so that
Margie,
there were different levels. Yep.
Margie, there's a question in the box to follow up to what you're talking about. What were some of those
Yeah.
meaningful engagement activities?
Well, I'll give you for instance, if people didn't have too much breakfast, maybe the appetite wasn't on, they were over in another little section, and they would actually make the 10 o'clock snack. We had a washer and a dryer down there on purpose, and after the meals, a lot of times some of the folks would actually throw the placemats and tablecloths in the washing machine and throw them in the dryer and shake them out and fold them so that everybody had all of those kinds of things. It might sound crazy, but we did a kind of current event type program so that people could see pictures of like the president and different things. And we talk about some of the things that were going on. We're an Episcopal home and a lot of Episcopalians. So there was a lot of old music, a lot of hymns and a lot of prayers and things that were familiar to people. Outings, we took folks out into our courtyard and really maximized our space in lots of different ways. We set it up so that there were 4 different stations so that people could wander around throughout and find something that was of interest to them. All 4 stations during the day had something different going on. Rather than serving a regular dessert with lunch, we had people come into the parlor area, and we had high tea with china cups so that after lunch everybody could relax. We'd have a fully baked cake, meaning it wasn't already cut up and put in little dishes, and we'd go around with a tea cart and ask people if they wanted tea and a little bit of cake while they were there. And that was kind of our downtime for what was a really busy morning. So those kinds of things made a huge difference.
So one of the other things I see, Margie, that people are saying, wow, how did you staff that? And at the same time, people are saying, one challenge we have is bringing back the volunteers, many of whom were lost during the pandemic, and all of whom were denied access during the pandemic. And so we need to rebuild some bridges with families, with volunteers, seeing the nursing home as a place that is part of their community and willing to come back in. I don't know, Margie, if you used any volunteers to staff what you are describing, but there are a number of interventions like what Margie is describing that have some evidence base behind them that were designed to be implemented by non-professional staff in partnership with professional staff. So I think one of our ways to address the perennial challenges with adequate staffing in long-term care will be to use that kind of mix, quite frankly, the same way that's being done in healthcare, with various levels of professional. Maine Healthcare Association facilitates an activity professional group. That's great. And that is another place, I think, to learn about. Yeah, that's just what Mo said. A great place to share and to learn more about these various activities. My colleague Angie Hunt at the Cedars and I actually just finished a paper that we are submitting to the Alzheimer's Journal for publication on optimal engagement of people living with dementia. And it's been really impressive to me to see the range of activities that can be implemented actually pretty easily. And not all of them require the same level of professional staff. But when you have professional activity staff, they can be the leaders and drivers for making more systemic changes. I don't know if we have any hands up, Amanda or Mo. Let's see. Can we get the link? Yeah. Mo, can you put that in the chat?
Yep, I'll definitely, there's Maureen Booth, just put her email in, and you can email her and she'll share the link. Also, somebody up a little higher, Jane, talked about, I work here at Lakewood on a designated dementia unit. I find the setup of the unit has been very helpful for our residents. We have better eyes on, and activity programs are very beneficial in resident engagement.
Beautiful.
Another great thing for us to learn more about.
I think the other, let's see, sometimes, see here. Oh, the lack of mental health resources. I'm curious to know, either by people, again, speaking up, if you would, or putting it in the chat, how many of you are using telemental health or telepsych services? And if you are using them, what you are using them for? Whether, so that's one question. The other question is, how many of you, if any of you, participate in any of the ECHO programs that have been put on by the Moving Forward Coalition? That's the one that was being headed up by Alice Bonner, and is a monthly sort of ECHO model of, yeah, learning ways to improve dementia care. So I'm just going to give you a moment to answer like I've asked many, many questions. Telemental health. Yeah, Ron, you're so right. I didn't catch this comment before about the allopathic bias towards symptoms. But I got to tell you, teaching at an osteopathic, I'm an allopath by training, but teaching at an osteopathic school, I got to say that the the medication influence from the pharmaceutical industry is strongly felt there as well. I don't think
Dr. Weary,
it's been hit as hard for naturopaths. I think that's right. All right.
Dr. Weary.
Yes.
So our company is using, this is Barbie Walker from First Atlantic.
Thanks,
And
Barbie.
we are using MediTeleHealth in multiple buildings.
How do you like it?
We actually the process has just started in 2 of them. And it's actually going quite well. They come weekly. I have many behavioral residents, and I'm actually initiating it in our GPU due to a lack of service. The original doctors that have been with us for many, many, many years are exiting. So they are starting up this actually in the next 2 days. Highly recommend their service. I have added in another building for about a month now.
Okay. And do you find that the residents like it as well as the staff?
The residents we're using with it are quite young and alert, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I've not had anybody against the MediTeleHealth. There sometimes with the cognition patients, it's a little more difficult for them to understand the video. But we've been able to work through what we've needed to, but it's been extremely beneficial for the staff with the patient to help through some very significant behaviors. We have some very high level behavior patients.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. I really, really appreciate that. I think that that has been the entry point for a lot of telehealth companies, is around trying to help staffs sort out the, as you said, these associated behaviors. I, again, though, would encourage people to make sure that when you're utilizing psych services, that they see as their first goal helping you sort out what that behavior is trying to tell you. I always worry a little bit when I hear my colleagues like yourself, Barb, talk about behavior patients or behavior residents, because that kind of labeling makes me think about that as a symptom of the condition that ails them, rather than, you know, a person who's expressing themselves through their behaviors. It's not to put you on the spot for like right speech.
No, you're not, because
But
I
it's
don't, we're doing gradual dose reduction through them as well.
sweet.
So no,
And
this is, oh no, not behavioral and related to getting medications. The use of the MediTelehealth is to, especially after hours, is to try to prevent, especially GPU, to prevent
beautiful.
rehospitalization, you know, over to the hospital, and or to not have to utilize more meds.
Oh, thank you so much for that clarification. That
No problem.
yeah, that leaves me feeling easier. Because I think that is a great service. That's the service I've always thought that I would love to do, because it's just a way to reach more people, right? So may people reach out to you if they want to learn more about the particular company you're using?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. So somebody named Jay Sylvester has also used it. And okay. Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Tina. When you say you don't treat dementia residents with behavioral health unless they have an appropriate diagnosis, you know, as a geriatric psychiatrist, I do think that dementia is a behavioral health diagnosis. So I don't, I'm not sure I understand when people say unless they have one. So if they're living with
Well,
dementia,
this is Tina, just to
yeah,
clarify that.
thanks.
What I mean is, if we have a resident that has dementia,
Mm-hmm.
that alone is not a reason for us to refer them to our behavioral health provider when he comes in,
I see.
if that makes more sense. We
Yeah.
have a lot of dementia residents here that, you know, they are pleasantly confused and sometimes they do have behaviors, but like I have one right now, the only time they have behaviors is when they need to go to the bathroom.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of make it
So,
right.
I'm not gonna send that to my behavioral health person and try to get them medicated for that because they're communicating their need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So we're very selective as far as what and how we go about doing things with these medicines because they're so very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
Dr.
it's
Weary,
interesting.
this is Margie, and I just want to kind of piggyback on a word that you use so effectively. And I think the ship is kind of leaving the dock on behaviors and beginning to think of them way more as expressions, just natural expressions of being cold or hot or bored or lonely or upset. And, lots of times because some tend to be bigger, they get labeled as behaviors. But if we can begin to move in the direction of talking them about expressions, that kind of begins to make you think about ways to respond to an expression. And also, we think about dementia, people with dementia as a really good way to describe rather than naming them by their disease. They're people with a disease that the disease doesn't own them. So, sometimes it's that person first language we're looking for. And sometimes just by using the different language, we can change our approach to care. And just something to keep in mind.
Thanks, Margie.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments into the chat or shout them out? We'll try to find you on the screen. One of the things, well, I like the term behavior expression. Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, I agree. I'm not sure who that is, but we could do an entire program on language. In fact, have done them. And it's kind of the kickoff, I think, to a lot of training for ourselves and for staff as well, so that we kind of keep training ourselves to be always using person first language and communication. Not all psychiatrists.
Susan, Dr. Weary, the Pioneer Network actually put together a booklet that is for free. And it's all about the language of dementia. And really nicely
great.
done.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Margie, for that. You know, one of the things I wanted to respond to also that people were putting in earlier about the staffing issue is to just make sure that everybody knows that there are, I'm sure you do, but I want to underscore the state's commitment to really trying to create meaningful training for direct care workers in all settings with respect to dementia. So our contribution to that from the Aging Maine Geriatrics Workforce Enhancement Program that I'm currently directing is to develop a micro-credential as a dementia specialist. And I'm pleased to see some of our partners on that here. And we will be piloting if y'all are familiar with sort of badging systems, micro-credentialing systems, we will be piloting our first badge, a dementia specialist badge, in our fourth quarter of this grant, which is in this spring, and then proceeding with it for the next several years. And what the micro-credential is designed to do is to make very, very granular what it means for somebody to be truly dementia capable in terms of providing, more dementia capable or informed care. So please stay tuned to those efforts. We're very grateful to the Cedars, to the Maine Veterans Home in South Paris for, allowing us to pilot this with their CNAs. If the results are as favorable as I fully expect them to be, we should have what do I want to say, like new and improved, but we should have another way of approaching training for our staff that is a little different than getting a certificate or putting in 12 hours and then taking a test and getting your certificate. This is going to be real hands-on, real meaningful, and making good use, I think, of digital technology to have people teach back. So I'm really excited to share that with you, and I think that we will be rolling that out probably in a more meaningful way across our system about a year from now. So, as Margie was saying, it's March 26th now. What are we going to do by May 26th? Well, what my commitment is to make sure that we meaningfully address the ask from direct care workers to provide better training, and we will do that through our micro-credentialing process. So if you want to hear more about that, I'm going to put my email in the chat box. Feel free to reach out. Yeah, if you want to hear more or just wait 6 months, then I'll be back with you.
Thank you, Dr. Weary. So I just want to take a minute to talk about next steps. I really appreciate everyone joining. And I guess what we're trying to ask is, the first ask is to make the commitment. Are you willing to, in your center, make the commitment to start working on this? And the next thing that I would ask is, we're only going to be meeting, what is it, every 3 months, Amanda? I think our next meeting is June 25th. Yes. So One of the things, though, as you saw, there is a toolkit that's got 8 fabulous steps. The toolkit has been around for a while, and one of the things that I think we want to do is to take a look at that kit and to see what things we could add to it. I mean, just seeing the stuff that Margie's putting in the chat, all the things that we could incorporate into the toolkit so that there's more and more resources for people. So I'm asking if people are willing to commit, and if they're willing to help behind the scenes and kind of in a meeting to start to look at the toolkit, see what we can do. I'd love you to reach out to me and, or put your name in the chat and I'll reach out to you. Definitely want some help, need some help. It's not something any one of us can do alone. The other thing is I pulled some data and looking at some of the incredible improvements some of you are all making. I've got a huge list of those of you who have decreased your use of antipsychotic by 30%, 40%, 20%. So people are doing a lot of great stuff, and we want to share that because it's all about how did you do it and how can we help each other do it. So really hope everyone will join and be a part. And I appreciate this. I'm going to reach out to all of you and we'll set up a second meeting to start looking at the toolkit. I think that's a great place to start. Open to any suggestions, other thoughts of what we could do. Yeah, if anyone wants the toolkit, let me know. It's in 2 different formats, and there's kind of what I call the mini version of it that I personally found easier to navigate versus the bigger version that has all the different resources. So I can send you whatever, both of those.
And Mo, I just want to acknowledge the number of people who are kind of like raised their hand. Hey, I'm in. And I really appreciate that, and my ask would be that you take an action step this week. It is like, don't wait. And the action step that we could all take is to tell somebody else about this initiative, to tell somebody else one thing you learned today, to tell somebody else in your community that you raised your hand to the commitment, and to ask them. I mean, one of the things I think that I have learned so much in the last year from the direct care worker group that Brenda and her team helped launch, the professional advisory group, is how much people want to be asked, not told. And so I'd ask your prescribers, I'd ask your medical directors, I'd ask your CNAs, I'd ask your residents, hey, guess what? Guess what? We're trying something again to keep doing things better as we learn more. And I wonder if you have any ideas how we could do it. So that's an action step that takes no more resources. Just tell somebody what you heard today. Thank you very much.
My goodness, I love that people have such, it takes a village. Great solution, suggestion. I don't remember who it is up here, but said, hey, why don't you put a link into the e-news? Well, duh, that makes perfect sense. I will do that. And I'll link both of them. Thanks. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your dedication and your commitment. Looking forward to this reinvigorated initiative. Thank you.
Great